Good morning. We're going to do an extra podcast, or extra devotion type thing this morning. Just behind the scenes, there are two main ways of going through the readings of the church here. There is the one-year series, where the readings jump around throughout the scriptures on a topical basis, and they repeat every year. And then there's the three-year series, and that was created in the 60s. At Vatican II, basically, with the goal of reintroducing people through a lot of scriptures. And so in the first year, you go through Matthew. In the second year, you go through Mark, and then bits of John. And then the third year, you go through Luke. And then you tend to just like run through whole books in the epistles. And people are like, well, that's great. Shouldn't we want to read more? But I get annoyed at it. Because I can appreciate the idea of let's go read through a book, but then they skip things. If I'm reading through a book of the Bible, I get really mad when we jump around. Now, if we're jumping around topically, like the one-year series, like what we use, that makes sense. But like, wait, if we're reading through Matthew 13, and then on to, why did you skip? It drives me nuts. And we skipped something in our readings. I didn't notice it yesterday. Today, when I do the normal devotion at the normal time, we're going to end up looking at Genesis 15, 16, and 17. And they skip like 6 verses in Genesis 16. I'm not going to skip them because why should we? But we skip Genesis 14. Now, this annoys me. This annoys me greatly because Genesis 14 is an incredibly important lesson in the story of Abram, in the story of Abraham. The book of Hebrews deals with Genesis 14 for like a chapter and a half. It's one of the major themes of a later book of the New Testament. And, oh yeah, we'll just skip by that. We don't need to see that. So I'm gonna read Genesis 14 and then talk about it, and then continue my walk, and I'll be back for devotion. Otherwise, it would have been me reading 4 chapters of Genesis this morning, all at one chunk, and that's just a little much. So let me read Genesis 14. If you will recall, Abraham and Lot had separated, and Lot chose to go down to the area around Sodom and Gomorrah, the nice green valley. Chapter 14. In the days of Amraphel, king of Shinar, Arioch, king of Elasar, Chedorlaomer, king of Elam, Til, king of Goyim, these kings made war with Bera, king of Sodom, Birsha, king of Gomorrah, Shinab, king of Admah, Shemember, king of Zeboim, and the king of Bela, that is Zoar. And all these joined forces in the valley of Sedom, that is the Salt Sea. 12 years they had served Chedorlaomer, but in the 13th year they rebelled. In the 14th year, Chedorlaomer and the kings who were with him came and defeated the Rephaim in Ashtaroth Karnaim, the Zumim in Ham, the Emaim in Shavah Kirathaim, and the Horites in their hill country of Seir as far as El Paran on the border of the wilderness. Then they turned back and came to En Mishpat, that is Kadesh, and defeated all the country of the Amalekites and also the Amorites who were dwelling in Hazor Tamar. Then the king of Sodom, the king of Gomorrah, the king of Admah, the king of Zeboim, and the king of Bela, that is Zor, went out and they joined battle in the valley of Sedom with Chedorlaomer, king of Elam, Tidal, king of Goyim, Amraphel, king of Shinar, and Arioch, king of Elasar. 4 kings against 5. Probably skipped it because of the names. Now the valley of Sedom was full of bitumen pits, and as the kings of Sodom and Gomorrah fled, some fell into them, and the rest fled to the hill country. So the enemy took all the possessions of Sodom and Gomorrah and all their provisions and went their way. They also took Lot, the son of Abram's brother, who was dwelling in Sodom, and his possessions, and went away. Then one who had escaped came and told Abram the Hebrew, who was living by the oaks of Mamre, the Amorite, brother of Eshcol and of Aner. These were allies of Abram. When Abram heard that his kinsmen had been taken captive, he led forth his trained men born in his house, 318 of them, and went off in pursuit as far as Dan. And he divided his forces against them by night, he and his servants, and defeated them and pursued them to Hobah, north of Damascus. Then he brought back all the possessions, and also brought back his kinsman Lot with his possessions, and the women and the people. After his return from the defeat of Chedorlaomer and the kings who were with him, the king of Sodom went out to meet him at the valley of Shavah, that is the king's valley. And Melchizedek, king of Salem, brought out bread and wine. He was priest of God Most High. And he blessed him and said, Blessed be Abraham by God Most High, possessor of heaven and earth, and blessed be God Most High, who has delivered your enemies into your hand. And Abram gave him a tenth of everything. And the king of Sodom said to Abram, Give me the persons, but take the goods for yourself. But Abram said to the king of Sodom, I have lifted my hand to the Lord, God Most High, possessor of heaven and earth, that I would not take a thread or a sandal strap of anything that is yours, lest you should say, I have made Abram rich. I will take nothing but what the young men have eaten, and let the share of the men who went with me, and the share of the men who went with me, let Ener, Eshcol, and Mamre take their share. This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. A lot of the times, the way we deal with Sodom and Gomorrah later on in the book is just, oh yeah, Sodom and Gomorrah were really bad, wicked places, and I know Abraham says, oh, surely there'll be 10 righteous people there, and God won't destroy them. There's a reason Abraham thinks this, because one of the coolest stories in Genesis is as soon as Lot goes down to Sodom and Gomorrah, he gets caught up in a war that Sodom and Gomorrah lose. They rebel and get beaten down. And they're kidnapped. They're dragged off into slavery. Lot is going to be enslaved. All the people of Sodom and Gomorrah are going to be enslaved. And Abram rounds up a posse, and he rescues them. And once he rescues them, and he has brought them back, not only does he not take anything, he's not going to take this to his advantage, but he takes them to church. And you get this fellow named Melchizedek. Melchizedek is my king is righteousness. That's his name. And he's a priest and a king, and that's something that doesn't happen in under the law of Moses, because the line of the kings and the lines of the priests are separated. The book of Hebrews makes a big point that Jesus is a priest after the order of Melchizedek, who is both priest and king, and is the king of righteousness. I mean, so this plays up later on, and Melchizedek is fascinating. In fact, Luther hypothesized. Luther thought that Melchizedek was actually Shem, Noah's son. That Shem was still alive, and we're going to go. Also, where's Salem? Well, we know it by the name Jerusalem. Jerusalem. So basically, Abram takes the people of Sodom to Jerusalem, where Jerusalem would be, and brings them to church after they've been rescued. So, chapters on down, a few years past, a couple decades. And God's love, I'm going to destroy Sodom. You're going to destroy all the righteous people? I saved them. I need to take them out. They've just gotten too wicked. Well, what if there are 50 people there? Oh yeah, sure, I'd stop for 50. Boy, God didn't even push back. Or what about 40? And you get that whole discussion later. This is why Abram is sure there has to be at least 10 faithful people there, because you got Lot and his wife and his 2 daughters. That's 4. And Lot has servants and stuff, so surely even just with the household of Lot, there's going to be someone righteous, because I rescued them. I brought them to church. Nope. So when we get Sodom and Gomorrah later on, it's not just that, oh, they're sexually deviant, bad places. No. They're people who have been rescued by God, but did not see it and did not appreciate it and forgot it. So Genesis 14 is a vital chapter for understanding what's going to go on and happen later on in the book. And for some reason, the Treasury of Daily Prayer says, we'll just skip it. What I'm going to say is, I don't know if I'm always going to be able to do extra things to catch up with things that showing up. Saturday's reading is Genesis chapter 15. Tomorrow's is and then Sundays would be chapter 16 and then through 17, although it skips like 6 verses, although I'm going to read those. So we'll do all of 15, 16, and 17 today in devotion, and that'll be fun. But I did want to get just so somewhere on record so you could look at Genesis 14 is beautiful, and it's important, and it explains what goes on with Sodom and Gomorrah in chapter 22, I believe. And then it points to Christ. It prefigures who Jesus is, that once again you're going to have a return to that man who is the righteous king, who is both king and priest and rules in salam, rules in peace, and Abraham and those whom are rescued along with Abraham will be able to worship in peace and be enriched not by their own efforts, but by God's bounty. This is the happiest chapter in Abram's life. And yeah, we skipped it. So, all right. Now that I've got that off of my chest, we'll be ready for a devotion at 8 o'clock as normal, and it won't just be me grousing about stuff. It'll actually be a proper devotion, so we'll get that set up for then. So I'll see you guys again, if you wish, in around 75 minutes. Have a good day.